Greetings and welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you guys are here. I hope that you're enjoying your weekend. Today I've got another magic review for you guys. We're taking a look at Disposition by Franco Pascali, and this was put out by Theory 11. This is a variation of John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph. You can pick this up for $15. You're going to get a 30-minute instructional video where you're going to watch Franco perform the effect for a spectator. Then he goes over the explanation, and then he gives you an idea of how else you could use the basic concept. That's pretty much what you can expect here. As per my usual outline, I'm going to try to give you guys my impressions, then give you a rundown of what you can expect to learn on here and what you're going to get. I'm also going to try to answer those questions that you guys have, and then I'm also going to talk about some other variations of John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph. So if you're not familiar with John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph, it was published in his book Impossibilia back in 1990, but it has been put out on a lot of different products that John Bannon has put out. And the main reason is because this is a very easy to perform Triumph-like routine, which is an amazing routine, gets excellent reactions, and in fact, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like in case you're not familiar with it, so that way you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at it right now. So as a point of reference, here's what John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph looks like. This is how I like to perform it. You take a deck of cards which you're seemingly shuffling. You tell a spectator to reach over and just touch a card. They touch a card. You tell them, try to remember that card. We're going to get back to it in a moment. And you say to them, I'm going to actually divide up the deck into 4 packets like this. And I'm going to turn 2 of them face up. Now, we're going to shuffle face up and face down. Do you know what kind of people do this? And that will always get a laugh. I really like John Bannon's original pattern of there's only 3 kinds of people that shuffle cards like this. Obviously, children, magicians, and crazy people, which is really funny. So here you're going to do exactly as you say. You're shuffling those packets together. You can immediately show them that you've got face up into face down all throughout the pack. It's a real mess. And you tell them, I don't know what card you selected, but what suit is it? In this case, they would say hearts. You make a magical gesture over the pack. And here, when you spread it out, to their surprise, every card has righted itself except for the hearts, in which case they're also in ascending order, which is going to be amazing to your spectator, and they'll be able to see here very clearly that the heart that is missing is the Jack of Hearts, which means that's their selection, and it will be. And that's John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph. It's an incredible, very easy, slightless effect that really anyone who's into card magic really should consider learning. All right, so you guys took a look at the John Bannon Play It Straight Triumph, and you can just see how easy this is to perform and how strong it is. And the reason why he called it Play It Straight is because you really are shuffling the packets together. And it's a little bit counterintuitive because your brain assumes that half of the packet or half of the deck is face up because you're seeing half of the deck being shuffled face up into the other, into the other part of the deck. So that is really the strength of the effect overall. And the reality is that this really didn't need too much changes to it. The reality is that it's great the way it is. It doesn't need anything else. And so Franco Pascali has made a couple of small changes to the effect, which I would argue are not really even changes, if you really want to call them that. And the reason is because the biggest things that he's brought to this is that, one, now the spectator can shuffle the deck or some of the deck, and he's also changed the procedure of how you shuffle the packets together by allowing the spectator to seemingly choose which packets are going to be shuffled together and which one is flipped face up. That's really the only difference. Other than that, it is exactly the same effect in nature. I mean, nothing really else has changed in the handling at all. So you can argue that this is just a technical rehandling a little bit, if you even want to call it that. So that's really what this effect is. Now, what are my impressions of this? So I'll tell you guys that you'd probably be really disappointed with this, and I don't think that his variation has improved the original at all. In fact, if anything, I think that it has probably just muddied the waters a little bit. So let's get into why I think that. So for number one, I think that this didn't even warrant to be released as a product to be sold. This is something that you would expect that you would just share with your Magic buddy or share on a Magic forum, because really nothing's changed. The idea that you're adding an idea by Benjamin Earl of allowing the spectator to seemingly shuffle the deck, it really hasn't added anything to the effect, especially because the spectator is watching you shuffle the deck face up into face down. So it's like, what's the point? It doesn't make any sense. But maybe you like that. I don't know. Maybe you like that. And then the other part of it really is this idea of allowing them to select which packets to shuffle together and which one to flip face up. You may think that's really clever. You may think that that makes it seem like the spectator has more control of the cards. I would argue that that just leads to more procedure and actually leads to more suspicion about what you're actually doing. And they're for the following reasons. Number one, when Franco divides up the packets, he has to look at the cards as he's going through them, which that never looks good. Because in the original Bannon version, you just look at the corner of the deck for a second as you're dividing the packets, and the packets are divided instantly, very quickly, which would make sense if that's really what you were doing. This idea that you're going through the deck and dividing the deck into 4 packets as you're looking through it, that doesn't look good at all, and that's going to arouse suspicion. The other thing I didn't like is that the spectator really doesn't have complete free choice of which packets are being shuffled, and you may end up having a spectator that's going to challenge you and be like, no, I want to shuffle these 2, and that may put an end to the effect right there. So that the effect really could go wrong. So for those reasons, I don't think it's really good. And if you look at the John Bannon version, there is this elegant economy of motion as the packets are being shuffled. I really like how the first 2 packets, you can spread them and show clearly that face up is going into face down. In this new version, Disposition, there's a possibility that you won't be able to do that based on what the spectator selects. So again, it weakens the overall effect. I feel that the overall effect gets weakened by that. So those are the main arguments of why I don't think that this variation is superior to the original. You know, when people come up with variations, hopefully 1, it's very different from the original, or 2, if it's very similar to the original, hopefully you've improved the process in some way to make the effect stronger or easier to perform. And I think that this really has missed the mark in every way on that form. So that's why I'm telling you guys that I think you should probably just skip it and don't waste your money on this. If you're interested in this effect, I would recommend that instead you go and just pick up the original source material. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of instructional videos that John Bannon has put out over the years that actually teaches his play it straight triumph. So the instructional video starts out with the performance, and then afterwards Franco Pascali goes over this procedure of how you can let the spectator seemingly shuffle the deck, which he says that he borrowed the idea from Benjamin Earl. And then afterwards he explains the routine in detail. And then at the very end of the instructional, he goes over a bonus idea of how you can use this principle to reveal a telephone number. So that's pretty much what's on the instructional. And the idea of him revealing the idea that you can use this concept to reveal a telephone number, it's not original to him. I don't even know why he threw that in there. It's extremely well known. And this was published in Joshua Jay's book, Sleight of Hand and a Twist of Fate, back in 2009. Joshua Jay gave credit to Carl Hine, who was the first person that really brought that out or pointed that out from what it looks like. And if you are interested, you can even find an effect that is based on this idea in Steve Beam's book, Semi-Automatic Card Tricks, Volume 10. David Corsaro, his effect, which was called Can I Call You Sometime? I think that's what it was called in there, where it's a routine that's based on this idea where you have a bunch of napkins with women's names on them with telephone numbers, and the spectator chooses one. You go through the play it straight triumph routine with a deck of cards, and the number that is revealed, the cards reveal a telephone number which matches the one that the spectator chose. So you can see that this idea has been already explored. So it is not novel at all. I don't know why Franco Pascali had to add that at the end. I don't know, maybe he thought that he was introducing something new. But anyway, that's what you can expect. Some questions you probably have is difficulty-wise, this is beginner level, just like the original. There is a setup involved, and it's more than just the order of some cards. You actually have to alter your deck a little bit to perform this the way that Franco goes over. Other than that, there is no difficult sleight of hand, just like the original version. And so really the effect, it feels and looks almost like the original, other than with those changes that I told you guys. And I think those are probably the questions that you are interested to know about. If you are interested, I will tell you about a couple of variations of the effect that are seemingly different than the original, and you might like. So for instance, I did mention Joshua J. He did publish his version or his variation of the Play It Straight Triumph in his book, Sleight of Hand and a Twist of Fate, which he called it Trumped Triumph. And he used a ribbon spread hideout technique to be able to first reveal the spectator's card, and all the rest of the deck looks like it's face down, gather up the cards, spread them out again, and now the only cards that are face up is the entire suit, except for the spectator's selection. So that was an interesting little twist on the whole idea. Aussie Wind put out his version in Repertoire, which was called the Not So Straight Triumph, and that was a version that was for two spectators at the same time, where one person would select a card, put it in their pocket, the other one would select a card. You go through the procedure, and when you spread out the deck, you'll see one whole suit that's face up, except for all the other cards, and the missing card's the one in the first person's pocket. The cards are gathered up, the magician makes a magical motion, spreads the cards out again, and now it's a totally different suit that's face up, and that's going to match the second spectator's card. So that was an interesting idea because he took this in a new direction. And finally, the last version I'm going to mention you may want to take a look at is Harapin Ong put out his version, which was called, I think it was called Crooked Triumph or something along those lines, and he published that in his book Principia. And that version was a little different because the magician immediately shuffles cards face up into face down, and then has a spectator make a selection. It's returned to the pack. The pack's divided into two piles. The spectator selects one pile. The magician spreads out his half in front of him, and it looks like you've got a bunch of random cards face up and a bunch of cards that are face down. And then he gathers up the spread and tells them that they think that this is the card that you've chosen. It is. And you tell me, now how I knew that? When you spread out your half again, now the only face-up cards are all of the cards of the same suit, just like in the Play It Straight Triumph type routine. And now you can spread out the other half of the deck, which shows the only backwards card, or the only face-up card, is the spectator's selection in the other half of the deck. So that was Harapin Ong's version of the effect. So those are some variations that you guys may want to take a look at. All right, so you guys can see here my rating for this effect Disposition, and I'm just going to touch on a few things here. You can see I gave him a -1 for originality because there's nothing original here. This is John Bannon's Play Straight Triumph. Nothing really has changed at all. He's added a very few small, maybe you want to call them refinements really, but I just think that they don't add anything to the original effect. In terms of creativity, I did give him 4 out of 5 because I thought at least his ideas were creative. In terms of comparing this with other versions, you can see I gave this 1 out of 5 because it doesn't really compare with any other variation or even the original. It's not as good as it, so really I can't give it any higher than that. And for the extra tips, you can see I also gave him 1 out of 5 because he's not introducing anything new. The idea of using the effect to reveal a telephone number is well known. This is as old as the hills. So again, it's nothing new. So that's why I'm giving him a score of 2.0 out of 5, which is highly unfavorable, and I would recommend that you don't pick this up. All right, so in conclusion, I would recommend that you guys obviously stay away from this effect. I don't think that allowing the spectator to shuffle the deck apparently, and by adding these extra choices, really adds anything to the effect. If anything, it kind of muddies the waters and it kind of ruins the, elegant economy of motion that John Bannon had in his original effect. In fact, I'm really surprised that John Bannon even let these people touch his effect. I'm really surprised about that. In the back of my mind, I can hear Jerry Sadowitz screaming. But anyway, just my own thoughts. And so I would recommend you guys just pick up the original version. I think that you're going to really like that. And if you can't get your hands on his book Impossibilia, there are a number of products that he's put out over the years that does include his Play It Straight Triumph. Anyway, if you guys have any questions or comments, just leave them for me below. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning into my magic reviews, and I'll see you on the next one.